Hello everyone. On this video we will be looking at how to divide our fractions. Alright, so the first thing we're going to look at is how many different ways you can see dividing fractions being presented to you. Okay, so for example, you could have 3/5 divided by 7/8, or that very same equation could be 3/5 divided by 7/8, or you could see it as 3/5 divided by 7/8, or you could see it as 3/5 times 1/7/8. Okay, which is just the reciprocal of the denominator. All right. Now, what we mean by reciprocal so the reciprocal of a number is just what we will call flipping the fraction by swapping the numerator and denominator. All right, so for example, the reciprocal of 5/7 is 7/5. Literally all we did was get it and flip it. The reciprocal of 1/8 is 8. Okay? And why is that? Because the reciprocal of 1/8 is 8/1. So that means 8/1 is just equal to 8. Okay? The reciprocal of 12 is 1/12. Why is that? Because you have 12/1. The reciprocal of 12/1 is 1/12. So 12 is equal to 12/1. So to find the reciprocal of 12, we first had to make it 12/1, then we flip it. Okay, so the reciprocal of 2/9 is, and the reciprocal of 15 is, okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to fill in those two. All right, so the reciprocal of 2/9 is, of course, 9/2. And the reciprocal of 15, you can rewrite that as 15/1. 15/1 is 1/15. All right. So if you are still writing, feel free to press pause. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our next page. And these are our steps for dividing fractions. Okay, and once you do them a few times, hopefully it'll become easier for you. But first thing you do is you write down your first fraction. Okay, that's your first step. Your second step is you change your division sign to multiplication. Then your third step, you flip the second fraction, or you get the reciprocal of the second fraction. And then your fourth step is you simplify and solve by multiplication. All right, so let's do a quick example of that. Okay, so what if you want to solve 2/5 divided by 4/3? Okay, so doing all four of those steps, you can do them one after another. You don't have to write multiple steps down. So you write down your first equation, which is 2/5. Okay, so that's your first step. Then your second step, you change your division to multiplication. So this division sign becomes multiplication. Then your third step, of course that would be your second. Then your third step, you will flip the second fraction. So this 4/3 becomes 3/4. And then you go ahead and you solve. Okay, so you have 2 times 3 over 5 times 4. Okay, now we see this 4 can be 2 times 2, so we can simplify that before we finish our multiplication. So you have 2 times 3 over 5, 5 times 4, so we'll make that 5 times 2 times 2. So those two will cancel out and be replaced with 1. So you have 1 times 3, which is 3, and 5 times 2 times 1, which is just 10. Okay, so 2/5 divided by 4/3 is 3/10. Okay, so you may be asking yourself, why does this work? How do we know this is true? All right, well, let's start off with this problem here. So we have 2/5 divided by 4/3. All right, so what if we rewrite that as 2/5 divided by 4/3? Okay, all we did was rewrite it. We didn't change anything. All right, so what we're going to do is we want to get that denominator, or get rid of that denominator. So we're going to multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same value. And that same value happens to be the reciprocal of the denominator. So instead of 4/3, we're going to multiply it by 3/4. And 3/4. Okay, so since we multiply our numerator and denominator, which are the same value, anything divided by itself is just 1. So it's like we multiplied this by 1. And if you notice really carefully, these two, if you keep on going, you have 2/5 times 3/4 over 4/3 times 3/4. Okay, so if we write this out, well, this will leave the same. 2/5 times 3/4. You have 4 times 3, which is 12, over 3 times 4, which is 12. So you have 12 divided by 12, which is 1. So your denominator becomes 1. Which ends up being 2/5 times 3/4, because any number divided by 1 is just that number. Okay, so we see that this just becomes that. So instead of going through all of these steps, we go through those 4 steps. Okay, let me push this back up. Okay, so that's why those steps work. All right, so if you are still writing, feel free to press pause, but we're going to go ahead and move on to a few more examples. All right, so for example, we have 7 over 40 divided by 21 over 25. Excuse me. All right, so let's go ahead and solve that one. Okay, so first thing we do, we write down our first fraction. Remember, that's your first step. Your division changes to multiplication. Remember, that's your second step. And then you flip your second fraction. So 21 over 25 becomes 25 over 21. That's your third step. And then we simplify and solve. Okay, so that gives us 7 times 25 over 40 times 21. All right, so if we take a close look, 25, we can replace that with 5 times 5. 40, we replace that with 8 times 5. And 21, we can replace that with 7 times 3. Okay, so that will give us, instead of 7 times 25, we'll have 7 times 5 times 5. 7 times 5 times 5. Instead of 40, we'll put 8 times 5 times, and instead of 21, we'll put 7 times 3. So now we can go ahead and do all of our simplifying ahead of time. So we have a 7 here and a 7 there that cancels out. We have a 5 here and a 5 there that cancels out. And it looks like that's all that will cancel out. So we end up with 1 times 5, which is just 5, over 8 times 1, which is 8, times 3, which is 24. Okay, so 7 over 40 divided by 21 over 25 is 5/24. All right, so let's look at this example. Say 2/5 divided by 3/8. And write another example. Let's say 3 3/4 divided by 5/2. And what I want you to do is I want you to solve both of these on your own. Now, a hint for this one, convert the mixed number to an improper fraction. Let me clean that, give it a little more room. Before starting your steps. All right, so go ahead and press pause and try to solve those two on your own. All right, so I'm assuming you've pressed pause and you've solved these two. So let's go ahead and verify your answers. Okay, so for this one, write down our first fraction. Your division changes to multiplication. And you flip your second fraction. So we have 2 times 8 over 5 times 3. Okay, now with this one, you could make the 8 2 times 4, but there's no 2 and 4 for it to cancel out with at the bottom, so we're just going to leave it like this. So we know this is, when we multiply, that'll be our simplest form. Okay, so 2 times 8 is 16, or 5 times 3, which is 15, or you can write that as a mixed number as 1 and 1/15. So depending on which answer which form you have to put it in, both of those will be correct. All right, so let's move on to our next problem. And as the hint told you, you have to convert your mixed number into an improper fraction before you can apply the division steps. Okay, so you have 3 3/4 divided by 5 over 2. Okay, so you have 4 times 3, which is 12, plus 3, which is 15. So you have 15 over 4 divided by 5 over 2. Okay, now we go through our steps. Okay, so we write down our first fraction, which is 15 over 4. Our division changes to multiplication. Okay, then we flip the second fraction. And then we go ahead and multiply. We'll simplify, then we multiply. So you have 15 times 2 over 4 times 5. Okay, now we know we have a 5 here. So that 15, we can make that 3 times 5. And this 4, we can make that 2 times 2. So instead of 15 times 2, we'll put 3 times 5 times 2. And instead of 4 times 5, we'll put 2 times 2 times 5. Okay. And now we go ahead and do our canceling out. Okay, so this 5 here and this 5 there cancel out and both becomes 1. Okay, and we can pick either one of these 2's to cancel out with the 2 in the numerator. And they will become 1. So you have 3 times 1, which is 3, over 2 times 1, which is 2, which is 1 and 1/2 if you convert it into a mixed number. All right, so not too bad once you get a little practice in. All right, so if you're still writing, feel free to press pause, but we are going to go ahead and do a few more examples. All right, so for example, what if you have 4 1/5 divided by 1 4/10? Okay, so what I want you to do is press pause and try to solve this one on your own. All right, so I'm assuming you've already pressed pause and worked this one out. So let's go ahead and verify your answer. 4 1/5 divided by 1 4/10. Okay, so of course we have to convert both of those to improper fractions first. Okay, so whenever you have two mixed numbers, you have to convert them both to improper fractions. All right, so we have 5 times 4 is 20, plus 1 is 21 over 5, divided by 10 times 1 is 10, plus 4 is 14, so you have 14 over 10. Okay, so that now we can go ahead and convert it. So we have 21 over 5. Division changes to multiplication. We flip the second one. So we have 10 over 14. So that gives us 21 times 10 over 5 times 14. Okay, which can be simplified. Because this 21, we can make that 7 times 3. This 10, we can make that 2 times 5. And this 14, we can make that 2 times 7. All right, so instead of 21 times 10, we can just make that 7 times 3 times 2 times 5 all over. Instead of 5 times 14, it's 5 times 2 times 7. Okay, so these two 5s can cancel out and become 1. These 2s can cancel out and become 1. And these 7s can cancel out and each become 1. So we end up with 1 times 3 times 1 times 1, which is just 3, over 1 times 1 times 1, which is 1, or just 3. All right, so let's look up the next example. So we have 3 and 2/3 divided by 3. And once again, I want you to press pause and try this one on your own. All right, I'm assuming you've already worked this one out, so let's go ahead and verify your answer. Okay, so you have 3 and 2/3 divided by 3. Okay, so we have to convert both of those to an improper fraction. So you have 3 times 3, which is 9, plus 2, which is 11. So you have 11 over 3 divided by 3. We can just make that 3 over 1. Okay, so when you have a whole number, just put it over 1. Okay, so now we can apply our steps. Write down your first fraction. Division changes to multiplication. Then you flip the second fraction. So we have 11 times 1 over 3 times 3. Okay, so nothing cancels out, so we just have 11 times 1, which is 11, over 3 times 3, which is 9, which, if we want to put it as a mixed number, is 1 and 2/9. So again, depending on what form the question asked your final answer to be in, either one of those will be correct. All right, so let's do one more. Okay, so what if it just says divide 1 and 1/4 by 1 and 7/8? And again, I want you to press pause and try to solve this one on your own. Alright, so I'm assuming you've pressed pause and worked it out, so let's go ahead and verify your answer. Okay, so divide 1 and 1/4 by 1 and 7/8. That's just 1 and 1/4 divided by 1 and 7/8. Okay, so just like before, we have to convert those to improper fractions. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1 is 5. So we have 5 over 4 divided by 8 times 1 is 8, plus 7 is 15. So you have 15 over 8. So now we can apply our division steps, division of fraction steps. Write down your first one. Move that up a little. Division changes to multiplication. Then we flip the second one. Okay, so that would equal 5 times 8 over 4 times 15. All right, so we go ahead and simplify it because we know that this 8 can be 4 times 2. And we could make that 4 2 times 2, but this 4 up here is going to cancel, so we can just go ahead and leave this at 4. And this 15 is 5 times 3. Okay, so instead of 5 times 8, we have 5 times 4 times 2. Instead of 4 times 15, we have 4 times 5 times 3. Okay, and we go ahead and start our canceling. So we have 4 here and 4 there would cancel out. We have a 5 here and a 5 there that cancels out. And that's it. So we have 1 times 1 times 2, which is 2, over 1 times 3, which is 3. So 2 over 3, clean that 3 up a little bit, is your final answer. All right. So hopefully this all made sense, and I will see you on the next video.